Hey everyone, Genome here. Catch you on my next episode of my How to Fix series. Technically, I wasn't going to shoot this one for a little while yet, but seeing as the event is around the corner and something else that was possibly coming up early this week, I thought I had to go ahead and shoot the How to Fix video for none other than Winter Soldier.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
That's right, Winter Soldier. That's one of the coolest character models in the game, but also happens to be possibly the worst named character in the game. He's up there with the likes of Nobu and the others. Okay, he's not quite as bad as Nobu, but you get the point. He's really bad. He was used in kind of a pseudo event a little while ago, so some people have actually put some resources into him, even though he really wasn't needed back then. But we have come to find out he's going to be an integral part to unlocking Omega Red. So, with this guy, it's both good and bad. It's good because he's an easy to obtain character. Most people have him at a high star level with at least some minimal gearing, especially if they used him for that one last event. But on the bad, no one really wants to put resources in this guy, or never has in the past, because he's always sucked. So yeah, it's really kind of hard to judge if this is a good or a bad thing. Only if they give him a rework would it be a totally good thing. But it is semi-good in only requiring 3 really hard-to-get characters. You know, whatever the case may be on the unlock, we're not going to get into that. But what I really want to get into is actually fixing this guy. And I had some ideas that I think are somewhat in keeping thematically with him, and will at least elevate him a small bit out of, you know, the I guess it's negative tier, you might say, list. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Yes, yes.
Just like I always say with these really old, especially first year and second year characters, their stats are so woefully behind, it's not even funny. I mean, you need to at least double all their stats, just across the board. There's no way around it, you know, otherwise there's no possible way they can compete with anything that's newer. And even just doubling the stats isn't going to do it, because most of their abilities are woefully inadequate as well. But let's get into maybe trying to fix that. So, stats notwithstanding, let's talk about his basic first. As it is, it's pretty blasé, about as blasé as it gets. There's a little bit of a modifier for piercing there, but it's not that huge a deal. I wouldn't change too much on it, because basics are basic, especially these older characters, and I was having trouble thinking of anything like really thematic. You can do something like generic, like add a bleed on there, but he's already got that on another ability. So I'm just gonna say on his basic, it will always call an assist from either Captain America, military, or Hydra characters. That's it, just one assist from any of those characters if you're on the team. That allows you to kind of mix and match the teams he can be on. So maybe it allows for a little bit of plug and playness, especially in things like war and not raids really, but maybe raids, who knows. But I mean, he does have the military tag, so let's make use of it. But basically, his basic's just going to be a little bit better depending on the team makeup. But I mean, this is not much you can do with this other than revamping it completely. And I don't want to make it too much, so. Okay, so that's his basic. Let's talk about his special. This is probably the biggest change that I made, kind of benefiting his role as almost a straight damage dealer, and that's what he is right now. He's almost exclusively a straight damage dealer. I mean, you can say there's a little bit with this passive right now to go to the team, but in practice, the only thing this guy does is damage. So let's let him do damage more effectively. Right now, everything he does is single target damage, and that's so weak. Especially a guy with 3 attack abilities. So I'm going to make this one a pseudo AoE of sorts. So as we all know, Winter Soldier is kind of a crit-based character. See what I did there? So I'm going to build something into his special. It has to do with crit. First off, I'm going to always apply 2 bleed. I mean, it's a 3 cooldown. Give him 2 bleeds, for goodness sakes. Everyone has 2 bleeds nowadays, right? Give him 2 bleeds when he hits us. That's the first thing I would change, instead of that 75% chance to just apply 1. That's at least make it a 100% chance on the 1, but whatever. I want 2 bleeds. 2 bleed stacks, maybe he can move on to somebody else, but even that's not that much anymore. But here's the big change. On crit, I like him to perform the same attack on an adjacent target. Okay, so basically not adjacent targets, just an adjacent target. So if you go to the end, target the end, if he crits, he moves on to the one directly behind. And to further that, I think he should be able to continue the chain upon crit. So since it's the same attack, he can crit again. So he hits the main target with this, it crits, he moves on to the one behind him, or her, right? Since it's the same main attack again that he's hitting, if it crits, he moves on to the next one. I'm not sure if it will like rebound back. It's going to be completely random. I'm sure you could semi-control it somehow. But I think it would be a really cool thing to get his crit train rolling, and it might allow for some experimentation with ISO 8. Oh, go figure there. I think it would be good. Once again, he's not guaranteed to crit, so this is not going to just tear apart a team, but you can do some pretty beefy damage in the right setup. And, of course, with like ISOs and all that, too. So he can really start plugging away at this, especially if you can get his stats boosted somewhat, or if you have high red stars on him. So it turns from something ridiculously undangerous, is that a word? It is now, to something that's very dangerous, and that's what you want out of a damage dealer. He doesn't really bring anything else to the team, so why not make at least one of his abilities dangerous? So that's my idea for his special. Let's go on to his ult, which I'm not changing too much, because actually he's his best move, and it hits pretty hard, admittedly, but usually when it's just the computer hitting you with it. But once again, with the stat boost, if you got one, it would hit pretty well, because it's got huge percentage damage, especially if you put the T4 in it. We're talking like Ghost Rider levels of single target, or Ultron levels of single target attack, and it leaves heal block behind for a couple turns. It's also pretty brutal. A lot of teams have cleanse nowadays, so it's not as good as it used to be. But the fact remains that you can really drop a guy down to red health pretty easily with this move, or at least yellow, and then they won't be able to heal. And so, yeah, they're usually a setting duck at that point. So I'm not going to change too much about this, especially since this comes fully charged, but I'm going to add a slight bit of utility to this guy, because guess what? A lot of damage dealers, really good damage dealers in this game, have utility in this game as well. So all I'm going to do is, since it's called Mechanical Arm, it obviously hits very hard, and you would think it'd be concussive force, I'm going to say it's also going to apply a stun to the target. Single target, leave the energy the same. This will probably only go off once a match at best, unless you're somehow feeding him energy. I'm not sure how right now, but and that's it. It's just as simple as that. Just apply stun target, gives him a little bit of utility outside of damage. Yeah, it's rough. So, okay, let's talk about his passive. So, his passive is pretty bad. It can be good on a crit build team, but really, who builds that? You can't take chances. You just go with the sure thing. And really, honestly, even when these guys are critting, it's not doing the damage, except for in War with the Hydra team on War, right? Offense. But, I mean, outside of that, you're not getting huge crits everywhere. So it's just, it looks good on paper, all that extra crit chance, but really, you got to build a whole team around it to make it really effective. And he's not good enough to include on a team just for this passive. So, really, it's not that big a deal. And he does get some health max up. I'm going to add a few things. I don't think really much needs to change as far as his old stuff, but I think he needs some new stuff added. So here's what I would do. In keeping with the theme, especially if you're like an MCU fan or whatever, he, on his passive, is also going to say he will always assist on Baron Zemo attack, because we're going to just assume that Baron Zemo comes in and mind controls the guy, right? So he's like a ruthless, relentless soldier, and he's in Zemo's thrall at all times. So he's going to always attack when Zemo attacks, whatever Zemo does, but all of his moves are attack moves. So, yeah, not on his AoE passive, but on his attack. Remember, passives don't proc other passive people, unless they do. Also, in somewhat of a keeping theme of his somewhat fractured psyche, at least in the older movies, right? I'm going to give him a 50% chance to assist on any Captain America ability. So any ability. Kind of think like just about like a halfway of Sabretooth on Mr. Sinister, right? Same kind of deal. Anything that Captain America does, Bucky has a chance to possibly throw a basic attack out there. That's it. But I think it's kind of in keeping, because he's still got the villain tag, so, at best it'd be an uneasy alliance between those two, at least in the confines of this game. And finally, I want to add something here, kind of lending to his long experience as an operative and a spy master and a warrior. I would like to actually use something with the military tag, and here's the last piece of text I would give him. it would be to give all military allies immunity at the start of battle. So basically, he did a covert op. He kind of scouted the enemy weaknesses or learned what their armaments were, so he could just give everyone a round of immunity when they first started. I think it would be incredibly helpful to a lot of teams, especially with him on it, to get some opportunity to get rolling. Would it be strong? It'd be very, very strong. But then again, you gotta look at the military tag, and we can take a look at that real fast just to see if it would be overblown. I don't think so. And Omega Red, for those of you wondering, is not going to have a military tag, so no real fears there. I mean, there's some strength here. Of course, Punisher is pretty disgusting, but then again, usually he's on skill military. Are you going to swap out someone off skill military to put in Winter Soldier? Probably not, because that team is really well tooled together. Like, you don't want to take away Merc Soldier. That's like the best buff on that team, man. Huge stat buffs, right? The only one that's maybe a swing there is Black Widow, and she is so good on that team. Much better than like on Wave 1's Avengers. It's really hard to justify points going off the slot. So all I'm saying is there's not a ton of huge military characters. Looking at all of them in the game right now. And, Killmonger sees some sporadic play. War Machine, not really anymore. So I don't think it'd be overpowered. And I think it would allow you to, once again, be a little creative with some theory crafting. So let's get back to Mr. Barnes here. But yeah, that was it. So let me just do a quick recap and let you know my ideas for him. So for his basic, I would only have him call and assist from Captain America, military ally, or Hydra character. That's it. Just give his basic a little something, because it needs something, because it doesn't do much damage anyway. So let someone else do the damage. For his special, I would always apply to bleeds. And on crit, this is the biggest change, he would perform the same attack on an adjacent target. And every time he does this attack, if he crits, it has a chance to chain to another target. So basically, at best case scenario, he get every target on the field. Very unlikely to happen, but it could, Makes it a devastating move, possibly, and I don't think it would overpower him too much. For his ult, I wouldn't really change how it's written right now, other than to let it apply stun. It's a mechanical arm, it's robotic, it's really strong, it hits hard, daze him, knock a chromosome right off the person, whatever. He's going to hit him so hard. Just apply stun, give him a little bit of utility, because just, unless you're like Black Bolt levels of damage, you can't just be straight damage. You have to, in today's meta, you have to have some utility. Give him a stun. Most teams that he would be on would be kill for a stun too, by the way. And for his passive, I would add some text. It would be always assist a Baron Zemo attack. So any move basically that Baron Zemo does, he would Winter Soldier would assist him. He'd have 50% chance to assist on any Captain America ability. And all military allies will gain immunity at the start of battle. So that is how I would change Winter Soldier to hopefully bring him up. Once again, stats. He needs stats like every other older character, but assuming he got that across the board, which he probably won't, these are the ideas I had to try to bring him up to at least somewhat usable level. So what say you? What do you think of these ideas I had for Mr. Barnes here? He's a semi-iconic character, especially because of the movies and all that nowadays, and he has just never been good. I've seen people try to use him in videos and try to hype him up like he could be really good, and he's just never been worth building, at least in my experience. And I never even built him up for that event. I got him just high enough to where I had to get him into, but I never stuck gear into this guy. As you can see, he's still at tier 9 for goodness sake. But it's now we have a reason to farm him. Now we may have a reason to build him up somewhat, depending on how hard the event is. So let's make this guy usable in your roster again. So anyway, let me know about your ideas in the comments below. And until next time, this is Genome, just loving his favorite mind-controlled bad guy / good guy and fixing him. Out.